All right, let's call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole, or Plenary Committee meeting, open at 7:50 p.m. Well, that's fine then, thank you. Someone to move that we approve the agenda, move that the agenda be presented, be moved or adopted as presented. Any questions or additions? Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add another item, the International Plowing Match, onto the agenda. So that's going to be added under item 8.2. Fine? That's fine then. All right. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to talk about last Thursday's event, the one that transpired in schools. I don't know where we should include that on the agenda, but yes, would just like to discuss this. It's because you see, beforehand we had something, we had an item under which we could incorporate new items. Yes, yes, indeed. So we could include it under other items if you wish, under section 10, so 10.4. So 10.5 then would be a new addition to the agenda, events that occurred last Thursday throughout schools here in the area. That's fine then. Fine. All right then. Any? So this is an addition for purposes of discussion, is it not? Yes, yes, that's right. Well, fine. Thank you then. Anything else before we adopt the agenda? All those in favor then of adopting the agenda? Thank you. Pecuniary interests? None? Presentation by Sally Turner from Sierra Planning and Management in regards to the Recreation Master Plan. Very good then. Yes, I just wanted to say a few comments. This evening, Sally will be presenting to you the overview of the Recreation Master Plan. So it's being tabled tonight for your information. A bit like we tabled the budget. Now, once Council has had the 2 weeks to review it, or if you wish to have a longer period, they'll be brought back to you. Right now, the schedule is to be brought back for approval on the 16th of February, and at that point in time, it will be posted on the city's website as an approved plan there. There has been a lot of public consultation process. We'll be discussing what has been gone through, and we'll be presenting this to you this evening for your consideration, and also for your approval. Thanks, Helen. So welcome to our council. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and I would just like to start off by saying that it's been a really inspiring set of months, these past few months, to be in your community, and the facilities that and programs that you guys offer to your residents is really outstanding, and hopefully the Recreation Master Plan does justice to the investments that you've already made to recreation and will build on your existing strengths over the next 15 years. And so, let's go on then. All right then, okay? So just to begin with, I always wanted to go over the consultation process that took place to build the foundation of this plan. Now, the plan is built on what we've heard from the public. Do you want questions or after or during the presentation? Well, anytime really is fine. All right then, thank you. No problem, no problem. So, the master plan is grounded in a thorough consultation plan in addition to a review of the current situation of recreation as it pertains to utilization, capital planning, and other aspects, and that's all contained within the master plan. Now, as it pertains to our consultation process, we began with an online public survey and a public survey for user groups. Now, the online public service survey for unaffiliated residents gathered 392 responses, which is actually fairly impressive for a community of your size, and it really indicates how grounded these residents were with regards to the project and the topic of recreation. And we also held a user group and a public workshop, which I know that some of the people in the room here attended. We had 46 attendees, and it was a very enlightening discussion with regards to priorities as community residents see them as recreation now and over the next 15 years. And we also engaged in stakeholder engagement through telephone interviews and face-to-face interviews. And these residents were specifically interested in wanting to bring up some items in the master plan. And we also met with communities and staff to get an understanding how recreation is currently provided and some of the strengths of the department and some of the challenges they currently face. Okay, I have a question on this one. Yes, yes, go ahead. You're saying that the online public survey, 74% answered on, and a very minor response by the French, but most English, at least 12 to 14%, for example, in the city of Clarence and Rockland would have answered, and 68% is Anglophone. That's correct. I was surprised as well that we had so many Anglophone responses. We really based whether we had captured public views on recreation based on what we heard back. And we heard from a broad variety of ages, people in different communities across the municipality, and the people chose to respond in English rather than French. It was surprising, but we were happy with the responses that we got. How many groups did you have? Well, how many group meetings did you have? How many times? Yeah, public consultation. How many did you have? There's only 14% again of Francophones responded. We only had one workshop, of which there were only 19 people who were there. I was there. We had 46 people signed in. I don't know where they came from. Okay, they might have been attending undercover at that time. I we had a session in Bourget. We had a session in Hammond. We did a Hammond here. We did a session here. Also, I believe in Hammond. No, that was for the strategic planning. Mrs. Chouanier had a question. Yes, often what happens is this. People are francophone because they work in English most of the time. They're more comfortable in answering in English. So it doesn't mean that they're not francophones. And if you get a computer that's in English and you try to print a French word, you lose your soul trying to get it back, really. So, yes, all right then. Fine. So we assume that you have a soul. Yes. Oh well, let's not go there, shall we? It's either that or the devil will get me. Okay. All right, folks. All right. We might as well keep going, ma'am, in a more serious vein. Yes. All right then. Okay. So the master plan is built on a vision for recreation over the next 15 years, and the vision that we developed in consultation with staff, musical staff, is a recreation, a vibrant community that leverages the natural and inbuilt assets of rural and areas and hamlets, and the best of indoor and outdoor recreational experiences. So what we wanted to communicate here was that Clarence and Rockland is a municipality that is a collection of municipalities and is supported in our recommendations, in our response, in our master plan, that we have considered the needs of all communities within the municipality. It also recognizes the strong asset base that the municipality has in terms of its built facilities and also in terms of its natural facilities, like parkland, for example. So the mission that we developed for the recreation master plan was to maximize the capacity of high-quality recreation services and facilities to support residential and economic development. So positioning recreation as a central role, if you wish, in building the community. We developed 6 principles for the master plan, and these are the pillars on which the plan is built. So the best way of think about these is, when this plan is hopefully ultimately approved by council, when communities such as the recreational department, brings opportunities for investment up to council in terms of recreation to make sure that they fit in within these principles or one or more of these principles. So the first is to leverage recreation to build a healthy community. And this actually, you see, I was in another council session a couple of weeks ago, and one of the council members came up with a very interesting point. He stated that recreation is always on people's agenda, and when you go through the budgeting process, recreation kind of slips down a little bit and takes on a supporting role. So what we're saying here is that we have to make sure that the master plan encourages council to see recreation as a key pillar in building a healthy community. Now, the second is making recreation accessible for all. So, our recommendation speaks to making recreation financially and physically accessible, both in building design, but making sure also that residents have access in all facilities to activities and programming. Also, leveraging those natural assets that Clarence and Rockland already has, acknowledging that many of the natural assets will be longer term and will require strategic investment, such as the waterfront. Encourage policy partnerships and alliances. Now, during the presentation, I was inspired by what I saw in this community. You know, you have a very strong history of very positive and effective partnerships, to provide recreational facilities and programming. So we're encouraging that the municipality continue on in this vein, providing necessary infrastructure. So that means both ensuring existing infrastructure is invested in to ensure that it maintains its utility to residents, but also planning for the next 15 years when the community will continue to grow and develop needs to obtain new facilities. And finally, the principle of efficient and effective service delivery. So ensuring that the investment that the municipality makes in recreation is is uh, is used efficiently by the community services department. So our recommendations, when you see the master plan, there are actually 57 separate recommendations at the back end of the document, all of which fall within one or more of these goals and objectives. So this kind of gives you a flavor of the goals of the master plan, what we were trying to achieve through the recommendations. So the first is to promote health and wellness and physical activity, to promote physical activity as a way of life through programming, and to promote activities for all members of the community, irrespective of age and income, and to ensure that this goal is achieved throughout cities and overall communities. So these overall communities say that partnerships will be important to expand programming into rural communities, but that's not to say that there isn't a role for municipalities to play if there is not a partnership that arises in that regard. Our second goal is to maximize access to recreational activities or opportunities. So programming in the hamlets and the city's hamlets, and to leverage new and existing programming through rural programming. Also to provide activities and support activities on a year-round basis, indoor and outdoor recreational activities, and ensuring that when we invest in festivities or activities, should I say, whether they occur in an arena, to make sure that there are complementary facilities and programs there, also prioritizing accessible facility design in both the new built and also with an eye to accessible facility design when we're doing retrofitting of facilities, and to develop also core events and facilitate access of community groups to smaller events, acknowledging that the municipality has a role to play in facilitating community groups and providing recreation to their constituents. Also, the ultimate goal was to tie you to recreation. This is what we had throughout the consultation, whether it be through public workshop or through stakeholder discussions. I had this residents call me directly to bring this to my attention. It was a very cogent topic for the master plan to address. So our goal here is to provide programs for all ages, and particularly growth programs for those that are aged between 13 and 18, particularly in the rural areas as well, and to invest in traditional and non-traditional infrastructure that encourages participation across all communities, basically. So our fourth goal is to prioritize and enhance outdoor recreational activities. Again, this is something that we heard a lot from the residents. And our objectives here are to prioritize trail, bike, and park development and to provide uniform standards of developing parks throughout the city. In this, we acknowledge that any network is going to be a longer term aspirational project. So, with creative recommendations within the master plan to phase in planning for connections in between communities to existing parks, to enhance utilities of current parks to residents and also connecting them to recreational activities. And finally, under this goal, to work and increase the variety and amenities in parks. So we provided recommendations within the last plan as to Section 37 of the Planning Act, which is a tool, that allows municipalities to leverage through negotiations, through the development process, a greater role for developers in developing costs and to develop parks in keeping with people's wishes, should I say? I'm sorry, and also to invest in recreation as a long-term project. We talked about the partnership with regards to waterfront along Rockland, and identify that most of it is privately owned. So even though it's how shall I say, a very much underutilized asset, allowing residents to recreate in that area, any sort of trail access along that path is going to be a longer term project. And within that, we've provided recommendations as to steps that municipalities may take, such as land banking, creating a disposition policy for parks, to a better plan around raising funds to develop the waterfront and allow it to be part of the recreational master plan over a period of time. And with regards to investment and asset facilities, as I said earlier in the presentation, we acknowledged that the municipality has made significant investments in recreational infrastructure in the past. And so one of our objectives is to ensure that these facilities are able to continue to be available for residents to use in the future through investments in them. Now, we've also indicated that municipalities should pursue all opportunities to develop infrastructure through external funding. Again, you have a very track record to pursuing those opportunities when they arise. And finally, within this goal, to ensure that community services has sufficient resources to maintain all of the assets that you currently provide in the recreational system to a high standard. And finally, goal 7 is to support and partner access to recreation. So to grow successful existing partnerships with operators and to develop new programs through partnerships and to investigate new partnerships to enhance growth, to grow the 13 to 16 years of age programming. Acknowledge also that seniors face problems with regards to mobility, whereby we require more mobile-oriented community activities within Rockland, and also to increase access to parkland trails and outdoor venues. So we view developers as partners within the recreational process, you see. So as I indicated, the master plan has 57 different recommendations. So I've tried to put together the key recommendations under which most of the others fall. So one key theme is breathing new life into Clarence Rockland's recreational assets. So what we have recommended is that the city decommission the Jean-Marc Lalonde Arena and to identify opportunities to repurpose it into an indoor ice-based recreational facilities. And this should be completed using partnerships. Also, we also recommended that the city maintain community centers to improve the appeal and utilization of those centers. Utilization is very were fairly low in any event, but through the consultation process, we did hear from the residents that some of the community centers needed quite a lot of capital investment just to get them up to operating standards, and also to focus immediate waterfront development work on client availability opportunities. I know that the municipalities have allocated some monies towards waterfront development, and based upon the size of that current fund, what we recommend is a planning exercise. And at this point, that would eat that up fairly quickly and not necessarily move the process forward in a meaningful way. So what we've recommended is to focus on identifying constraints before a design exercise is completed. And finally, to work with the capital region YMCA, YWCA to remove financial barriers with regards to swimming. What do you mean by that exactly? Well, indoor swimming, yes. Well, the financial barriers, what do you mean by that? Okay, so swimming is a loss leader for municipalities. It's a very expensive game to be in, and so most municipalities will subsidize the cost of public swims. For this example, in the city of Ottawa, it costs between $4 to $5 per adult to swim and $2 per child to swim. After tax, yes. It's $13 at the Clarence Rockland YMCA, YWCA, which represents using the tomb. But if you're not a member of the YMCA, it's fairly cost prohibitive to take your children swimming there. So, the second thing that we have in terms of recommendations is additional facility investments. So to consider the development of twin diamond facilities with playing fields, with an option of donating one of those playing fields as a long-term project. Given the demand for tournaments, uh, various tournaments, and to grow a year-round soccer program, for example, in Clarence and Rockland, there are already plans for two other pads, and we've included those. And based on the distribution of residents and demand, we have recommended that the council have an option for a third splash pad in the coming years based on community interest. It really depends on whether or not there is demand within the next decade or so. We've also recommended that the municipality has taken a phased approach with the urban core of Rockland becoming the first phase, should I say, as development occurs. And we've also recommended that the municipality assess the creation of a skate park in Hammond, a permanent also location for the dog park as a very popular resource, and play structures for older and younger youth in parks as part of the capital replacement asset plan that you already have in place. So, looking ahead now, we have recommended that the municipality plan for one additional ice plan within the plan period of 2021. So that means is we're not saying that you have to build a new ice pad before 2021. So we say that when you get to 2021, you might see the need for a new pad. So you need to have a new plan in space before 2031. I'm sorry, not before 2021, but before 2031, to have a new ice pad and to appraise existing and to take the existing garage or implement a new garage upon existing municipal lands. And finally, improving efficiencies. These recommendations pertain to more internal measures that we've recommended to improve the way that Community Services Department provides recreation. So to investigate option for work, flow software, and to identify opportunities uh, with regards to responsibilities for operators and to identify additional workers within the Community Services Department. So that concludes my representation and recommendations. I don't know if you have any further questions on what I've presented. Well, I see the dollar bills going up and up on what you've recommended up to now. I, are there any questions then? Are there any questions? Well, I think that we should encourage people to use all facilities, that people from one village may be compelled to go to other communities, to make use of the pool so that we don't duplicate too many services, but at the same time have enough facilities in each area that makes the whole city, well, to make people move throughout the city so that there are attractions here, there, and everywhere. I think it's important. I completely agree with that, and that's included in our plan. We have made it very clear that we're not recommending that every community has a whole swath of recreation assets. Any other questions, Mr. Lin? Well, with regards to Jean-Marc Lalonde, we're not using it as a pad right now. It's being used by the school. I believe they're going ahead with it. What do you mean, like to obtain partners? Are you talking about getting businesses involved in all of this? Well, it's on our work plan that we're presenting to you later. We're bringing a separate report back, but it's part of the overall recreational master plan on the future use of Jean-Marc Lalonde Arena. All right, so this is, yes, obviously, this is a facility that they had to address in their review, recreation facilities, and what to do with it. So, I think it will be coming back this year. Suzanne? Mr. Zantz, should I say? You really think we'll need a fourth ice service within 2031? Well, I wasn't saying to build a new ice service. Well, but you said that by that point we may be looking at one because I didn't see anything at one with regards to the current Clarence Creek Arena and the age group that it applies to, and so on and so forth. Well, I think it's going to become a bit clearer when you read the master plan. So what we're recommending is that the municipality read the strategy, in terms of ice, or review the strategy by that time, particularly with regards to the use of Clarence Creek Arena. Whether you choose to build additional pads, it all depends on the condition of the building at that time. And so if council desires to invest in any new facilities or new opportunities that arise from partnerships, Ms. Collier, when is your master plan, when you say that we'll be bringing a separate plan? Yes, tonight we'll be presenting a plan with regards to this year, and the strategic plan will be coming up shortly, which will link together the work that has been done in the recreational master plan. Okay, well, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much then. Thank you. All right then. Thank you. Fine. Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll distribute the plan, or the draft plan. Well, I told town councilors that you can do so afterwards. Yes, the draft of the plan, yes. However, if you do have any questions with regards to the plan, please forward them to me, and I'll draw up a complete list that will be forwarded then to the relevant individuals, to the agency, so that they may answer all questions all in one fell swoop instead of going to a back and forth exercise. Thank you. Correspondence. Let's go on now to correspondence. Letter dated January the 11th, 2016, from the Royal Heraldry Society of Canada in regard to coats of arms. So, we already have a coat of arms. Yes, we already have one. Yes, we already have a coat of arms, so I don't know what this letter refers to. A new coat of arms? No, we've got one already. Well, I don't know if I've ever... Well, that comes from a particular company that wants to drop a new coat of arms. This is a letter that might be filed. Well, we might file it, but the letter does state that their work will be paid in full. It comes from the Governor General's office. Mr. Mayor, I think it's important to have something that's representative of our area and the assets within our area. Well, I believe that it would be, yes. But I believe we already have a coat of arms. If there is an existing coat of arms, I believe it would be interesting to take a look at the existing coat of arms, if we have one already. Well, let's see if indeed all costs are paid by the government. And if this is the case, well, the necessary people can take a look at to what we can obtain. If it doesn't cost us anything with regards to coat of arms, revamped coat of arms, or whatever, because normally the crest, in French, we call this a crest or coat of arms. I think it's important to have one, and there are specific attractions with regards to our area that can be reflected in a coat of arms, and I believe it would. Well, you see, the reason that is given to town council, well, we don't have an idea as to the description of the new coat of arms. Well, the uh, Clarence and Rockland coat of arms is much more developed than just a simple logo. Well, let's look into this more thoroughly. If I'm not mistaken, I came up with an old coat or previous coat of arms that was drawn up for Rockland. But with regards to Clarence and Rockland, well, we could come up with additional information, send that information to individuals that would come up with coat of arms that would cater to the needs of the committee of the whole, and maybe see if Clarence also has something in this regard. We'll file this, and Mrs. Wett will be asked to perform further research on this, as if she doesn't have enough to do right now. Uh, Letter from the Hockey Eastern Ontario in regards to sponsorship for all Ontario Bantam AAA Championship. Mr. Lalonde, you're sponsoring this. Well, this is an opportunity that we have to sponsor a tournament that will cover all teams within Ontario. You'll have recruiters from all major teams in attendance here in Rockland. If we are to host such a tournament, a wide-ranging tournament, it's going to generate a lot of money for the Rockland area, restaurants, gas stations, hotel facilities. As you told me this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, we had an amount to budget in this regard, and I would move that we offer $2,500 to the Hockey Eastern Ontario Association to sponsor the All Ontario Bantam AAA Championship. Yes, we set aside $5,000 for tournaments. We thought that only $10,000 would be set aside, but we thought that only half a year would be applied in between September and December. And when we talked about a half a budget, it would be applied from September to December for associations that needed money with regards to tournament play. We won't be left with all that much if we earmark $2,500. But Mr. Mayor, because merchants will benefit from all of this, it might not be a bad idea that the remaining $5,000 might be paid by them. No, we're being asked to come up with a $2,500 sponsorship, not 5,000. So I won't see the remaining $5,000 put into that. Well, you see, Mr. Mayor, our existing merchants will benefit a lot from this. So it seems to me that they should put in money. Well, merchants can remain in business because, they went through a couple of very healthy financial weekends here and there. So you allow me to say a few things. I'm sure that merchants have been approached, not just town council. Yes, because merchants do pay taxes. Well, if merchants are ready to hop on board and with regards to this project, it's certainly much more encouraging that we know that they stand ready when we'll be receiving money to host this tournament. Well, I believe that, Mr. Mayor, we have to be represented one way or another without not earmarking the entire 5,000 remaining dollars. We might set aside $2,500. You're all in agreement? Yes, I'm in agreement. And also to offer them ice time at the relevant hours that they would need to conduct activities. Well, we'd have to enter maybe into negotiation with the CIH. Well, you see, the Cobras are not recognized as being potential recipients of monies at the same rate as local sports clubs. They're considered as a pro-rata team. If they have half of their players playing bantam hockey, they're recognized as half team. In this elite sports league, there are people from Saint-Isidore and other from this area that play in this league. There's one local team that plays within the AAA Bantam Hockey League. Other teams are regional teams that take part in activities of such a league, but the Wildums also are recognized, but under the Cobra banner. But the Wilds are part. Initially, they were part and parcel of the Cobra hockey team. Well, I'd be in agreement with $2,500. Yes, $2,500. If we give over and above that, we'll burn through our remaining money. Mr. Mayor, it might be wise for those tuning in to make people tuning in what the $2,500 will buy us. Material, publicity material, advertisements during the hockey games themselves, the right to make use of promotional banners, a full-page advertisement, and the souvenir in the program itself. Mr. Lalonde, I think it would be wise to contact the organizers of this tournament so that further information could be supplied to in associations and tell them, if you get involved in such events, these are the benefits that you reap. And also, these types of tournaments that lead to championships yield a lot of benefits, and we might also forward those contacts to different associations so that in the future we can sponsor local tournaments. I've had occasion to discuss this with the mayor this week, and we're planning a meeting with different associations on February the 16th to talk about what we discussed during the budget process, and the mayor had invited to sit down with us to talk about their concerns. I'm glad that you've included me in all of this. I believe that we'd come up with 2 or 3 potential meeting dates, and, well, Mr. Mayor, do we as town councilors have a right to take part in those talks? Yes, of course. I'll come back to you good folks with regards to a date. Maybe I send an email with regards to the date and the time and the venue in which a meeting will be held to myself, and all town councilors. Would be wise to determine the impact that we could obtain from such such an initiative. Is there a cost for spectators attending the games at those tournaments? No, I believe not. This is an elite type tournament, so I believe there are no associated costs. Mr. Boucher, are there any costs with regards to attending those games? No, I didn't see any costs with regards to attending games. I didn't see any mention of that. All right, then all those in favor? Carried then. Notices of motion, we have none. Let's go on now to question period. If any of you have any questions, you're welcome to step up to the mic and ask your questions. Do you have a question, Mr. Bouchard? No, I don't have a question at all. Or maybe a comment. If you do have a comment, this is a question period or comment period. I have none at present. This is your last chance now. Last chance before. Okay, let's go on now. The United Counties, a report from the United Counties of Prescott and Russell. Last year I asked to see the Prescott and Russell residents study that was commissioned. It's something that cost us quite a lot. We were supposed to be forwarded a report, a study that was commissioned that I asked to see the report of about a year ago. Now, we'll obtain results, and I hope it will be public, and we obtain answers to our queries. How many beds are we talking about? I think we're talking about in or around 140 beds. I believe Laurier again, we're talking about 115 beds. So those that took part of the process will be handed a copy of the study. Well, a copy of the study will be handed to the management of the Prescott Russell residents, and then will be brought to council. Will be forwarded to council or sent to council. End of February, maybe beginning of March. Fine. And after that, we attended meeting in Kingston. It was a Warden's Caucus that was ongoing then. We talked about priorities, uh, internet, natural gas, uh, to come up with less expensive energy resources. The government talks about giving grants to bring natural gas, especially around the Agri East area. There are three problems: the water park, the Saint Albert cheese factory in Hawkesbury East. These are three problem areas. These are three venues that have insufficient electrical reserves. They've applied to hydro to obtain higher reserves, but hydro wants a couple of $1 million to bring in the necessary feed lines. Now, if an Ottawa-based contractor decides to come up with a project, the hydro is ready to send or to bring in electricity to contractors without any cost. Why would they not do the same thing for all these three entities? So the Warden's Caucus wants to promote a free additional hydro assets in the area. I also had a question, Mr. Mayor. There's a citizen that told me that there were residents in Bouvier that don't have reasonable access to internet because of existing trees that are interfering, I guess, with their use of internet. Well, I believe they're taking a look at a wide-ranging area. Hawkesbury has a big problem because it's very expensive to bring internet in Hawkesbury. Now, they admitted themselves that there are some pockets within given areas that will be difficult to serve internet-wise because of existing trees. Well, you see, Videotron are asking, I think, something like $25,000. They want residents to pay for this, to facilitate the implementation of internet facilities. Well, I believe that they refer to the building of new antenna facilities to bring in internet through wireless facilities. Let's go on now to next item on the agenda. Well, the Committee of the Whole recommends the Town Council to approve trucking services rates schedule that is approved for 2016, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. Any questions? Mr. Lalonde? Well, I'm going to say it in English because it's easier for Mr. Darche to follow along. I have no problem for doing this in 2016, but for future years, I think that we should consider changing the formula just a little bit to to allow the smaller trucking companies to have a shot at the city contracts as well. I had a conversation with Mr. Simoneau. We can have a priority list, but we can also have or come up with a way to benefit the lowest bidder to a certain extent, but also use an average hourly rate for others to have a second pool so that we can at least give out work. I'm guessing that the winter time, where the call is bigger for such services, well, you have crushed stone in the summertime. Yeah, well, I think that the majority of your trucking demands are probably during the winter, depending on your winter. But we also have demands during the course of the summer as well when we use those rates for summer maintenance activities. I believe that part of your solution, Mr. Lalonde, I don't agree in giving an extension for 1 year. I think it should be done now. Okay, well, I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't want to extend it another year. Look, right now, I thought about this last week. They have a list. They start at the top, and let's say 5 or 6 contractors. They go through those. And I thought they were going back at that line, and then they keep going. And but they always come back to the first one. It's always the same people that get the contracts. So sometimes contractors from Bourget, all over the place, Clients Creek, they have a license and all of this. Insurance for the winter. They're involved in snow removal. They apply here at the city to obtain their license, and they don't get called. And what's going to happen is that a lot of our people are going to stop getting involved in the process, and then we're going to get caught short. I believe that we should go down the list from top to bottom to give everybody a shot. Well, I think we should benefit the lowest bidder, or bidder, should I say, to a certain extent. Saying you're allowed 1, 2, or 3 trucks, and make an average at the beginning of the year, say this is the trucking rate that we're going to approve, and then call up these people at the beginning of the year and say, look, this year, this is what we're prepared to pay. Are you willing to work at this specific rate? And if the people say yes, we'll keep on with the list. If they say no, well, we'll see you next year. Well, I think that if we go through a storm, we contact them, they say yes. Well, I think that we should be able to focus on the community more and say, well, let's give a chance to the smaller contractors. Mr. Simoneau, well, we need to make it competitive this way. So the low bidder should always get called. Yes, maybe 4 trucks, maybe not 4 trucks, maybe 2 trucks, but he's got to have, we've got to promote competition. So we've got to reward the low bidder. But after that, it's very simple. If I take a look at the list right now and I look at the rate per cubic meter, the lower bidder is 417 and the next one is 420, then we go to 425. Well, I say very simple. You work at 417 and this is the rate that we have, 417 per cubic meter. And if number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, if they don't want to work, that's it. But they're all given a chance. And then, if we use the first 6, after that, the next time we go down and we start with number 7 and say, do you want to work at 420? Or they don't want to work. So we'll just go with the lowest bidder. Yes, but give them a chance, starting off with the lowest bid, but give them all a chance. Well, I have no problem with that then. But if we say we're just going to take an average, well, the low bidders will boost up a price by $3 and then the other ones by $3 and there's no competition anymore. But during the following year, if they know that's the process, what they're going to do is that they're going to bid higher because they know that everybody's going to make use of their truck. It won't be competitive for everyone. It will be for this year, but not for next year. Well, you see, every year they know what price was bid upon last year. So, look, if you want to solve that, if you take the price that you had this year, add inflation rates to it, and there you go. Well, you have to go with the market because sometimes some years there's a big demand, and other years there's not much of a demand. So prices could go down significantly sometimes. Let me tell you something. I've been in this business since 1967, and I've been attending council meetings since 1968. And trucking rates and truckers, well, not bitching, but they were complaining that they were not working. And 50 years or 40 some years later, it's the same thing. So let's resolve this. You're the low bidder. You've got 2, 3, 4 trucks. We'll take 2 trucks. The rest, well, we go to the next one. And if you don't want to work for that rate, well, go. Mr. Lalonde, Mr. Mayor, what I'm recommending then is just to say, let's start off with the current process that we have and have the department come up with a possible solution, and let's go ahead, starting this year. I think we should do it this year. I think so, because last year we had to go for a year. And some of the contractors that missed the bidding missed the boat. And we told them that after a year we'd go back and fix this. And I'd like this to be fixed this year. All right? So everybody in favor of the rates? Are you okay with that, Mr. Darch? I think that what I'm hearing is that we've heard principles that you'd like us to observe, and you'd like us to come back with the next meeting. Take a look at this with a view of amending it this year. Yes. Now, one thing that we're proposing to do is that to go off to another standing offer, which would change the way we do business. Right now, it always goes to that lowest bidder. But we can take the comments that we've heard here today, and we'll come back with something at the February 16th meeting for council's consideration. Well, thank you, sir. Very good, then. Caron Street right-of-way widening. I just like to determine the following. You've already had a recommendation to adopt the rates. Yes, and we're amending this so that we recommend that we go down the list and that they come up with a way to revamp our existing policy. So is everyone in favor of adopting the resolution as it is presented and as voted on? Yes. Everyone in favor also in going along with going to the recommendation, working with the lowest bidder and going down to the list after that. Well, the recommendation is to bring this back to the Director of Infrastructure so that he come back with a recommendation for 2016, taking into account those comments that we've already received in this regard. Yes, well, thank you then. And I second that too. I had seconded that. Let's go on now to Caron Street right-of-way widening. So, do you need a resolution for that? We don't need a resolution for that. But it was still a recommendation, so you need to vote upon those. Well, everyone is in favor of this. So everyone's in favor of this. Well, that's great. 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 All right. We might have to take holidays if things keep on going the way they are right now. Mrs. Simard, that the Committee of the Whole recommends Council to refuse the Caron Street right-of-way widening for the properties located at 1111-1161 Caron Street. Seconded by Councillor Zant. I'm sorry. That went by me too quickly. Any questions? Well, just a comment, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. From what I had occasion to read with regards to this, I'd like to congratulate firstly the administration and town council for having opted for this new organizational formula and avoid that engineering step onto the urban planners' feet or overlap into what the urban planners are doing and vice versa. You know, Mr. Darch, what is he saying? What is he saying? I'm sorry, he's saying this in French. What is he saying? No, you're on a roll. Mr. Darch, you're on a roll. Don't worry about it. You're on a roll here. Yes. All right. All those in favor then, carried. Time to go to bed, maybe, Mr. Darch. Appointment of officials now and acting officials for the consent granting authority and for the signing of plans of subdivision. Councillor Levert? I should read this? Yes. That the Committee of the Whole recommend to Town Council to adopt a bylaw with regards to the appointment of officials and acting officials for the consent granting authority and for the signing of plans of subdivision. Seconded by Councillor Zant. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item to be dealt with, application to amend the official plan of the urban area of the City of Clarence and Rockland. Technical amendment to legal non-conforming use policies and residential infill densities. Yes, whereas the Planning Department recommended to the Planning Committee the approval of the application to amend the official plan, and whereas the Planning Committee recommended to Council the approval of this amendment, that the Committee of the Whole recommends Council to approve a bylaw amending the official plan of the urban area of the City of Clarence and Rockland in order to modify a policy dealing with legal non-conforming use and to clarify the densities associated with the residential intensification project as recommended. Oh my God, I don't believe I went through all of this. In French now? No, thanks. Any questions? Seconded by Councillor Simoneau. Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the urban planners for having prepared such a detailed report. It's quite enlightening. All those in favor then? Carried. Thank you. All right. That the Committee of the Whole adopt the draft of zoning bylaw, the 5-year review, as recommended by the Infrastructure Department for land planning use. Seconded by Councillor Zant. Any questions? Did we have a draft of the zoning bylaw? I don't believe we've received a draft of the zoning bylaw yet, have we? Well, well, we're, this is a motion to receive. Now, let's not get too excited. Uh, well, I see. So you only have, that's why we only had one meeting scheduled for February. That's just in case you had nothing to do, nothing to read, you know. Yeah. All right. Mr. Mayor, it might be wise, you know, to pack your bags and head off to sunnier climes, maybe. Who knows? At this point in time. Mr. Lalonde? Yes. Yes, he's aware of what's going on. That's fine. All right, then. I think that we're doing your job. Mr. Simono had nothing to do, so we kept this for him as a gift when he came back from Florida. Yes, ma'am? This is similar to you receiving the recreational master plan tonight. We've tabled this with you for your review and input, and we'll be holding a public meeting after because there's a slight process amendment to the bylaw, but we've brought it to the draft state in any event. Can we, so we have a copy of this? Yes, of course, and we'll review that. Yes, fine, thank you then. All right then. So all of you have relevant binders, so all of you are in favor of receiving these documents? Yes, of course. Very good. Let's go on. Item 9.6. LAS electricity procurement. Mr. Lalonde, will you read it? I will read it. But luckily, we have Jerry Lalonde in attendance because I do wish to make comments. Fine. All right. There you go. Please step up. There you go. We're all good. We're all good. The Committee of Whole recommends the Town Council to adhere to the LAS electricity procurement. Seconded by Councillor Sima. Questions? Go ahead, Mr. Lalonde. I will do so. I made the necessary research. We're dealing here with a retailer that's recognized as 11 other companies selling energy, dust energy, etc. And the price that he came up with is subject to further adjustment. And it's 6.75 cents per hour and not 2 cents per hour. I do not recommend this at all. During the course of individual weeks, people come to see me. There's one that on the 13th of February next managed to cancel this agreement. The Saint Albert company, the one that's located also, there's one involved in the manufacturing of styrofoam boxes. And I told these folks, I said, you know, they come up with 15 cents per kilowatt per hour. That's impossible. At present, you're paying 8.3 cents per kilowatt hours, and you're paying 12.8 cents during intermediate periods and 17.5 during peak hours. Now, when we're talking about Saturday, you're paying 12.3 cents, and now we're asked to be paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour. The corporate adjustment, the global adjustment is wrong. I phoned up the ministry. That's exactly what I concluded. Yes, but you see, given what occurred during previous years, the AES program, you see, last year, it was the worst year they had. You see, they saved 2.3% for all municipalities. 137 municipalities throughout Ontario were involved. Well, at present, sir, the electricity that we're consuming throughout different parks that we're overseeing at present, are they subject to intelligent meters, if I might use that term? No. Well, we're talking about $340,000 worth of electricity. Well, this does not relates to residential and commercial use, but for the municipality itself. And the global adjustment is 7.98. Well, 7 cents. Well, close to 8 cents. And this changes each and every month. Let me tell you, this changes each and every month. Well, with regards to the spot market demands, yes, it does change each and every month. Mr. Mayor, at this point in time, listen, I would like that this item be tabled so that we'll research this further. Because you see, look, the way this is presented to individual ratepayers, you have to take a look at the fine print, but and not too many people look at the fine print. Yes, we could have included a lot of fine print in the report that was forwarded to council. Hydro was a complicated business, complicated matter. That's the reason why we go forward. We recommend that we go forward with the LAS company because they do have experts in this area that represents municipalities. Well, look, he's a salesperson. He's a retailer like the 11 other retailers that deal in this. There were 41 initially, now there are only 11 left. And individual ratepayers or people into contracts with them had 11 days to cancel their agreement. Now, at present, they have 11 days afforded them to cancel that contract. Let me tell you, there are some places that pay $40 more per month. There's a residence on Saint Joseph that was paying $900, and that person is now paying $1,400. Are we talking about residents or businesses? Residences and businesses. This deals with the city of Clarence and Rockland, and this is an MAO-sponsored program that caters to municipalities' needs exclusively. It does not impact residences or ratepayers at all. Well, when you're talking about AMO, the province accepted all others, and the AMO accepted all others. You're certain to have a fixed price all throughout the year, but you're paying quite a difference. Well, what we're seeing what we pay for 2016. How much were you paying per kilowatt per hour? How much were you paying? What we were? I don't have the figures for 2014, Mr. Lalonde, but if we take a look at the figures that the ALS or the LAS and AMO, we'd save about 10% based upon the kilowatt, the wattage that was used, and the LAS prices that was imposed. And there's a reduction of close to 1 penny for all business, for all town-related buildings, and 1.5 cents for all industrial class buildings other than municipal buildings. You see, the city budget for Hydro 2016 is $723,000. So we're looking at approximately a savings of $30,000. Now, Mr. Mayor, I support what Mr. Lalonde, this particular Mr. Lalonde states, because, I find that firstly, we're entering into a major contract here. When we're involved with hydro, it takes a bit more time, to get this picture straight. I would like to see more money put into LED than to change LED, etc. Look, we're talking about $147,000. We're about to go in. We're talking about this savings of $30,000. Let's just change the way we do electricity and actually change LED with the majority of things that we can and not worry about this. You know what? Our bill will go down by even more than $30,000. It might go down by about $140,000 a year, $150,000 a year for LED will go down. LAS has a program again through AMO for that, and they're finalizing the proposal for us, and there are 2 other companies that are also coming in to make proposals also. I'm sorry if I continue on. You see, when you come to hydro, it's just not clear. I've had people knocking at my door and telling me, telling me that Ontario Hydro wants to privatize and so on and so forth. No one knows exactly what the actual price is going to be. They lock you in, and afterwards they say, well, I'm sorry, you're locked in, you're just going to have to pay. On the flip side, you said there were 100 and some odd municipalities already involved? 137 municipalities. On the flip side, I'm thinking, it can't be all that bad if 100 and some odd municipalities they all locked in and regretted their choice. Either way, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to back up Mr. Lalonde and say, let's table this, let's have a better look at this, and I don't think we're ready to make a decision, not even a recommendation. Mrs. Chouinard. Now, do they give us a comparative report each and every year as to what the rate was each and every month? Yes, I do have reports dating back for the past 10 years. Mr. Lalonde, the amount that Councillor Zant has mentioned includes those costs with regards to the 7/10 of a cent that is saved, the delivery administration. These figures do not change. It's only the price with regards to the kilowatt per hour used, the ratio. Yes, in the report that I have, we're dealing here with kilowatts per hour use, not delivery. Yes, we're talking here about 314 or 304, $3.40. In any event, well, Mr. Lalonde, this will never change. This will never change. Let me be quite frank. Hydro won't change their practice with regards to this. As Mr. Zant said, Hydro, in any event, the agreement winds up in 2016. Mr. Lalonde? I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago with regards to a company that was interested in doing business, and I forwarded a copy to Mrs. Collier with regards to this. Now, does this, when we're talking about efficiency and all of this, did they send you a letter with regards to this? Yes, we're taking part in a conference involving these folks tomorrow. This is a company that approached me through one of the contractors that I do know personally, and they obtained the contract to service the city of Ottawa, allowing them to change the way they do things and the way electricity is delivered throughout the city of Ottawa. And they've also serviced Pembroke. What I've understood is that the city invests the same sum year after year to become more energy efficient with regards to the use of the LED lights and the heating and lighting of municipal buildings. At the end of the line, it costs them less because they're consuming less electricity. I believe that I spoke to Mrs. Collier just to make sure that they would send us a letter and that we would take part in this particular conference. I have a bit of apprehension about this because of the fact that, well, that is an ever-changing field, but I continue to be optimistic. Well, do you wish to table this then so that we can obtain further information? I'd just like to see what's going to happen tomorrow with the conference that we'll be attending. You see, when we're dealing with hydro, this is a different business altogether. Given the hydro costs and the changes we want to bring about by adopting LED lighting, well, LAS was supposed to come up to us with a new proposition, right? No, new proposal. Yes, that particular company, but not hydro itself. Can we obtain more information, Mr. Lalonde, with regards to LAS, with regards to those points that were raised by Mr. Lalonde? No problem whatsoever. Maybe you might advise those involved that we'll obtain further information. Well, we'll, of course, send you the information before the next town council meeting. And if we see that the information we've received is feasible and meets our needs, then that's fine. If not, we'll look into it even further. Well, can I add something else, Mr. Mayor? It might be interesting to, it might be worthwhile to phone up not the 137 municipalities, but maybe 15 or so municipalities to determine whether they're satisfied if they regret entering into an agreement. Well, we might have some feedback as to that. Yes, indeed, Mr. Mayor. They have a lot of figures that they've come up with and a lot of results. Well, through the MAO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, we certainly will be able to determine through their feedback if they're satisfied or not, and even determine whether or not some municipalities that are involved in that process and that particular contract are satisfied or not with the cost-cutting involved. Again, let's make it clear that this is not for residents or businesses, just for municipal use. Fine. So is everyone in favor of deferring this to a further date? Yes. Mrs. Collier? I just wanted to make a comment, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about changing to LED lights. There is a significant investment that needs to be made by the municipality. Now, we all have our eyes on the savings that are available. We have to make a significant investment up front, and for a couple of years you don't have a payback for 2 or 3 years. Well, I remember that the Good Roads and even the AMO stood ready to finance the installation itself for the city, and then it comes out of the profits. Well, there's a price for all of those services, and we're still looking at all of the options. Mr. Lalonde, our staff person, has been working very hard because you see, the companies are coming, as Councillor Zant has stated, companies are coming all the time, as we saw. There are many companies involved in that business. That's why we have Jerry in the room here. He's also involved in that. I haven't made any promises as to when it's coming to you, but it would be nice to realize savings in the next year or so in the budget. But it's a different matter altogether. Mr. Zant, I'd just like to comment on what you're saying. I think we all understand what you're saying. It's a case of a short-term versus a long-term gain. Same case applies to solar panels. It will take 8 years before you recoup your money and cost savings. But it's crucial. It's important for us to move forward, even if it takes 3 years before we see changes. Long-term, yes, but we're working on the options. But the market keeps changing every 5 minutes on this, right? And we obtain new information, just as Councillor Lalonde, André Lalonde, has received that information. Like I followed all over to Jerry, and he's weighing all of the options. And we'll come up with something this year. It's a very good return on investment, if it works. Do we know if the developers, the new development, yes, they are. Are they going LED? Yes, it is a requirement. It is a requirement. But you see, the investment that Nation and Alfred had to make were not as significant as what we're faced with making. So that's why we're taking a look at what our other options are. Thank you. There's no doubt it's a payback. It's just a question of when are we ready to obtain payback. There are a lot more options for LED, by the way. The hydro savings, they're not options. We can't approach hydro on our own. I understand what you're saying, sir. I understand what you're saying. Yes, but still, I understand what you're saying with regards to the savings. If you're telling me that you want us to sign off on this for the savings, then just go to LED and get the savings, as opposed to enter into a contract. They do tie into each other, that's what I mean. I understand your position, but we'll still recognize savings with hydro, even if we have LEDs, correct? Because we'll be paying less money. Well, it's trading one for the other. I think in the report, this will be explained how everything works together. If we have the assurance that all other municipalities are still pleased with the results, yes, it might take people 4 or 5 years, to reap the savings they wish to reap or to obtain. I understand it's a good thing, and certainly I will vote for it if it's a good thing. But if they can prove and demonstrate that by proving it, then I think it should be sufficient. Well, you have 137 municipalities that are on board with this, so it's easy to determine by a sampling of a few of them whether they're satisfied or not. Well, we've asked Mr. Lalonde to pick up the phone and survey these people. Thank you, Mr. Lalonde. Item 10.1, 2016 road work priority. This year, yes. All right then. I'd just like to make a comment that you have many lists presented to you on the road work, and this final list. At the last budget meeting, Councillor, I believe it was the first meeting in January, Councillor Simoneau, or the last meeting in December, asked that we come back with the list. We worked with Councillor Simoneau. We put the list together to present to you this evening. It's at your discussion and your discretion as to what you want to amend or go forward with. And we'll note one error on the spreadsheet that is before you. The Laurier-Laporte intersection should have been 100,000 in Ward 1 and 2 and not 2 and 3. It's important that we vote on this tonight so that we can go out and obtain contracts, because we're early in the year. We have 2 or 3 persons that are involved in the bidding. Any questions? Maybe upon your discretion, if I take a look at the report, you mentioned that you're not going to go easterly through Division Road, but westerly through Wendover and so on and so forth. Now, I want people to understand that 60,000. If it takes us 200 meters from Rolin, we stop at 200 meters from Rolin. We have 60,000 that will be used, unless we find some money somewhere else. Now, in regards to Saint-Jacques Street, we discussed this with Mr. Lalonde. We have engineering to do because Saint-Jacques is a major reconstruction project with regards to re-engineering this year, and next year we can tackle a good part of it. Bouvier, Mrs. Chouanière, you'll notice that we extended this to Russell because the asphalt between the old concrete bridge and Russell is in very bad shape. So we'll have to perform work all the way through Russell. And we're also going to do some membrane and gravel work. Duquette, surface treatment, Wood Street, Edward Street to the end, or at least to where at the 90-degree nightmare that's there. La Salle, I had to keep something for myself, Esquette La Salle, and Maisonneuve to Lalonde. Well, we've discussed that today, so it may not be the exact solution, but if everybody goes to the road work program for 2016, Jean-Marc is getting the least, and I'm the second one, and then after that, everybody is getting treated very fairly. Any questions?
Yeah.
Did you make sure to take a picture of all those happy faces after what I've just outlined? Please do so. Mrs. Simard is happy too. Yes, I'm very happy. It's just a comment to say thank you. I know that you guys have worked hard. You've heard us, well, not bitching, but maybe politely complaining, expressing our opinions. So thank you very much for all the hard work that you've put in. I think that we need to thank Mr. André Lalonde for sure, because I've managed to convince him that we're going to do the rest of Bouvier next year. Well, that's good. There was a whole look at the municipalities, and yes, now if we consider both, I know it sounded at looking at, it's going to help Clarence Creek out a lot. And Mr. Darge, well, actually, we've had 2 inquiries from the province there about additional information, which I'm going to do in the positive, because they're still giving serious consideration.
Actually,
yes.
We've had 2 inquiries from the...
These will be 2 other items that we'll bring in for Landry Street. It will be repaving, and that's going to give us some more opportunities for development. And at the same time, it will give us the security of the second, knowing that we'll be able to do work for Bourget.
And at the same time, it would give us security of a
yes.
second line coming into Clarence Creek.
I believe we have an item to repair the bridge. I think it's $100,000 to take a look at the bridge. But you do have a bridge there, don't you, at the end of Laurier Street, and you have 2 also in the Lemelin subdivision. No. There's a bridge. Mr. Darch, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If the diameter is more than 6 meters, it's considered a bridge. Hold on, let me take a look. It's actually your 10 feet or whatever, 3 meters. I think it's over 3 meters. It's defined as a bridge, whether it be a culvert or a bridge. You have another bridge then, Mr. Lalonde. Let me take a look at that other bridge here. Oh, another question then.
Whatever, I think over 3 meters is defined.
We hired a project manager for this year to try to have a delivery of projects. Fine then. Is everybody happy? You know, I believe that everybody's happy, even Mrs. Chouanière, I believe. All right then. Well, you're not going to live that one down, let me tell you that.
So, everybody happy? Good.
Everybody's happy.
Monthly reports. Any questions with regards to monthly reports?
Monthly reports. You're not gonna live that one down, Jay.
No, I know.
Monthly reports. Any questions?
Any questions with regards to monthly reports? Any questions whatsoever? I believe, well, what I stated earlier on, that we revisited the road situation. Well, when can we ask questions to department heads generally? Well, we can ask questions when we get onto item 10.6. Okay, that's fine. CAO 2016 work plan. All right, Mrs. Collier, the only thing that I really don't like is when you state Q3 for economic development. I have a presentation to share with you tonight. It's up to you. We can go through the whole thing, or if you just want to ask questions, go ahead. All right, I think we'll just ask questions. So for Q3, what it would mean is this, is that we're trying to secure funding for the industrial park right now. The Director of Finance and the Mayor is working on getting a plan to you, and we'll execute a strategy by the time Q3 comes along. So, but we've got the message out to you, and because we've had public discussion this evening about the waste, revisiting the waste, that was on our operational work plan, but I made sure that I've added it onto this so that it be front and center, as well as the LED lights item. We wanted to work on this operationally. I didn't want to commit ourselves to this year because there's a lot of background work and information we need to prepare with regards to this. The main purpose of this work plan, it was to give you a main overview of the number of projects that need to be completed this year, and so we've put everything in perspective with the guarantees that have been asked for that are not necessarily in the budget, and I've included in the budget here in the list that we're aiming to have the budget included. And so that means that the budget consultation meetings will happen in November and not December. And so if we can back up the budget from March to December and go one more month earlier, so we won't have as many major hurdles. We had a large restatement of the budget to do this year to fix things. And what we'll introduce this year will be the 10-year repair and replacement plan. And that will be coming to you in September. So you'll be having a look at that before the the budget process. So by the time we get to the budget process, we feel it's feasible for November the 30th, unless something else comes up along the way. So there are some key points. We also provided at the end, and we keep sending it to you, the 2015 accomplishments. We're going to stop sending it to you now that we've moved into 2016. And we're going to translate the document so that if you want it in both languages, it's going to spell out all of the acumens. Now, if you feel there's something missing from the 2015 list, let us know, and we can add it onto the list so we can have a complete list for that year. Mrs. Chouanière. It's like having the budget prepared in November, because it might take until December to have everybody together, and November should be then easier. There are less events ongoing. It's certainly critical for staff, of course, to have that budget approved by year end, because if you come back from Christmas and you're into January to do the budget, it's very demanding, yes. So we will work hard to have that as of November 30th, at the very latest. Other questions? Yes, when we're talking about applications. Yes, when do you expect obtaining final decision? Well, we're talking about mid-February when we usually hear from them. And as Mr. Darch has stated earlier, we've had 2 phone calls from the granting group of employees asking for follow-up information. So we take that as a positive sign. Now, actually moving to stage 2. They've got the big pile of grants and say, well, this one meets all the requirements of the program, so we've moved to stage 2. And now they're asking for further information. They're asking for engineering drawings and other technicalities that we didn't have to submit initially. And now they're asking for more detailed information. And we're feeling hopeful on that. And I hope that I'm not going to be in an awkward position telling you that it's going to be in a few weeks. So hopefully by February the 16th we will know. We will know by then. Well, that's usually how it goes. You know, the ministry doesn't want to feel uncomfortable in this regard. Mr. Zant, from your list, I'm not an engineer, but what exactly is a barge screen or barge screen sewage treatment? Barn screen. I'm sorry. Barn screen. So what that is this. The bar screen, it needs to be put in place of the sewage treatment plant. It's a filtering system that filters garbage and prevents it from going into the environment. It's an actual screen. I believe that
Yeah.
you stated last year that this might cut down on some of the odors. Oh yes, yes it will cut down on some of the odors. It's not really a screen. All it is that it chops it up a lot more, so that all of these white matter pools that we see, there were some very interesting pictures indeed that we had occasion to see. I don't need to see the pictures to determine that there was a problem. I left those pictures out. Well, I'll send them to you just in case, you know. And you know we will. Yes, that's the problem. Yes, you know. Of course, you know exactly what our problem is, don't you? I've had dreams with regards to this in the past. Look, folks, let's go back on track. Any other questions? Let's go on now to item 10.4, the international plowing match. Well, Mr. Mayor, the international plowing match will be held in Finch, Ontario. Those matches last time around drew 82,000 people, and 425,000 goes to the international plowing match, and the other 425 figure, those monies that generated goes to the counties. They're asking for 1,000 acres worth of land. Now, there are 2 acres set aside for plowing, 200 acres set aside for parking facilities. That's in Fitch. International plowing match this year. 300 acres for plowing itself, 100 acres for the tent city, and 100 acres for the recreational vehicle parking facility. Just a question. When you talk about 1,000 acres, is that a whole parcel taken all together? Yes, it's one whole 1,000 acre parcel. You see, the farmer loses the use of his or her farm on that particular year. Yes, on this or the particular year, and then a few other years because the earth is damaged because of compaction. Personally, I wouldn't want to have this on my property, on my farm, especially if you're going through a rainy summer. It's going to be quite a problem. As Mr. Lennon has stated, you need to make use of land that has not been worked on recently, and you need from 500 to 700 volunteers also to ensure that this event will be held appropriately. Hydro will put in the electrical facilities needed to power the events. The farmer is given so many acres that he may use at his or her own discretion. Yes, we see in previous years, volunteers are working at the International Plowing Match, and now they're taking deposits for recreational vehicles to park there. We're not talking about a year from now or 6 months from now. When you're talking about recruiting volunteers, you're recruiting volunteers 2 or 3 years before the event. Now, we have to pinpoint an area, Mr. Mayor. We have to pinpoint an area. It's not mandatory, but it's preferable that we come up with an exact pinpointed spot. And we need to hire a coordinator to oversee events. We know that in Chute Blondeau, they had a Mr. Bruno Lecault taking care of business at that point in time during the last international plowing match. And you need an executive board made up of 6 individuals. Now, if ever we're interested in hosting the next plowing match, we have to attend the Guelph meeting before next April, or April the 6th, should I say, before April the 6th to put in our request to host the next international plowing match. Well, you see, it involves a lot of organization. You know, Mr. Lalonde knows, and I'm a bit pessimistic with regards to this, but if you're working acreage, uh, but we have people that have thousands of acres, but they're working cash crop there, you know, soya, corn, and so on and so forth. During the summertime, they won't be able to cultivate or to work this land that's earmarked for the international plowing match. I hope they're receiving a good amount because they'll be losing the use of this land. We'd have to meet with the Franco-Ontarian Farmers Association, a major association in this area, to see if they're ready to put their shoulder to the wheel. As a municipality, I don't think we can take care of all of this. We don't have a sufficient number of employees to take care of this particular event. No, we have to look outside of the municipality's physical assets. You know, we can offer uh, help in kind, a truck or something. But you don't have necessarily to hold this particular event on one parcel of land. It could be a property that is portioned off in many parts. So, Mr. Lalonde was involved in previous organizations. Hawkesbury East, last time around, hosted the international plowing match, and the Hawkesbury East mayor supplied the farm facilities then, because he was a farmer. But there are no 1,000 acres available unless we make use of those lands that are occupied by deer and moose. Well, the United Counties of Prescott Russell came up with an amount of money, but the United Counties did not oversee the organization, so they're not involved in the organization. No, and during the course of the last plowing match, no, that's right, they did not get directly involved in the last international plowing match. The Township of East Hawkesbury took care of the organization of the last international plowing match. I believe that Mayor Barton also helped out from Bentley Kill, but what's important is that they called upon the services of 600 to 700 volunteers. Let's not forget that Stormont also hosted the international plowing match that was held previous to Hawkesbury East. Let me tell you, it required quite a lot of organization. There is a lot of information, of course, generated by such an event, but I believe that the United Counties had contributed financially. Well, they contributed in setting up a tent, an information tent, the same thing they did when the international plowing match was hosted by the county of Stormont. Well, I believe that the United Counties of Prescott Russell administrators were ready to help out in the organization in setting up of the international plowing match this year in Finch. Yes, I believe that we have to consider that there's $800,000 generated. Let's not forget that the Finch event benefited from very nice climate. There was a Navan-hosted plowing match where they incurred a great deficit. Well, Navan was a disaster. There was one sunny day. The rest was certainly not blessed by clement weather. It was very inclement weather. Of course, we need volunteers to do all sorts of things. I think the first step. It's not the 500 or 700 volunteers that scare me off, because we've hosted events in our area where we generate a lot of money. It's just to come up with the appropriate property, and we'll just ask our farmers to determine whether or not they are interested in hosting such an event. You know, if
Bon, on parle pas de
if you
l'événement
set up things in such a way that you can call upon volunteers much beforehand, that's fine. We're not talking about volunteers that are going called upon to work in about 3 months from now. We're talking about, gathering a team of volunteers that will be called upon to work on an event or within the confines of an event that will be set up 3 years from now. I don't think we're solid enough to uh, cash out on a $300,000 deficit, especially if we have no control over the weather, and if the weather is atrocious, and we we're prey to a disastrous deficit. What can I say? There are more negative than positive aspects to all of this. Now, don't forget now, if there are makeshift streets, that are built in between some buildings that are erected during the course of an international plowing match, and if it rains on those makeshift roads, well, you're called upon to wade through those with rubber boots on that are knee high, basically. Well, we might ask the Franco-Ontarian Farmers Union, as suggested by Mr. Lalonde, and Mr. Séguin and Jean-Claude Chabot were quite knowledgeable, local area farmers, in the setting up of such an event. We'll obtain the necessary information from these good folks and come back to you on that. As I stated, Mr. Mayor, in previous years, we might tap into other resources, and there were some people that were in charge of previous plowing events that certainly knew how to go about things. Let's go on now to item 10.5. There were schools last week where there was two youngsters that came in with a toy firearm and another one with a real firearm, and this was sort of like a drill. And I heard that this had occurred. I heard this through Mr. Zant, and really, we have daycare centers within those schools. The city of Clarence and Rockland should be informed when such drills are conducted, with students coming in with firearms or false. I believe that the firefighting services, I believe, Mr. Mayor, look, when you attend the premises of a school that is locked down totally, it seems to me that they're not called upon to take the same approach as if they're attending there to fight a fire. It was unfortunate. We weren't even aware that this drill had been conducted. I believe it's indicative of some school boards, not all school boards, to do what they want when they want, and not to inform relevant municipalities surrounding those school boards or catering to those school boards of what's going on. I have children attending individual schools, and the experience lived by students from one school to another was completely different. One came out traumatized by the event, and the other one came out enlightened because there was good communication. It was flowing through that particular school. I spoke with the teacher, and I'm going to contact Mrs. Cartner, who is the school board trustee, and ask why this was done without us being advised. It's never easy to go through those simulated firearm attacks, and there's no plan that you can come up with to counteract these particular types of situations, because those situations are not fluid year in and year out. So my hat's off for them, to them, for having set up this type of drill, but I think it's much more important to work on fostering better communications with these folks and the city of Clarence and Rockland. Even the OPP wasn't aware of what was going on. I phoned up Mrs. Ouellette, and Mrs. Ouellette had phoned in turn the police officers, and we'd also closed the town hall doors for a certain period of time. Look, if we say that everything went as planned, look, last year ago in Saskatchewan, 4 people got shot down, given the same situation that was simulated in our area. And this could have led to some serious results, some dire consequences here. This is, of course, Well, these type of drills are mandatory in schools. Drills are mandatory in schools. So there's no reason from a procedural standpoint to have us advised of such drills that are ongoing or advise the firefighting services. Well, in case of fire drills, the firefighting department is advised. But, Mr. Mayor, we of the fire department were not advised of this particular drill. And there was an OPP officer even spoke to me, and we tried to determine together why the protocol was not followed as it should have been. What could have happened is that some hotheads might, activate the fire alarm during the course of such a drill being held. Look, we should send a letter advising the school board that if a similar type incident occurs next time around, even if it's just a phone call to the firefighters, it's not the responsibility of the school, but it's the OPP that needs to be aware. Yes, well, given the red code procedure, the school is held liable for setting up a procedure to be followed. So we should send a letter to the OPP and to the school that we be included in all of this and not excluded. Right. Yes, well, what this means is this, Mr. Mayor. In the event of a code red drill, a simulation, you'll be called. If it happens in true life, you won't be called. Well, they don't have a protocol to follow? Well, look, sir, we'll be meeting Mrs. Cynthia Savard of the OPP, and even in March, we set up training, code red training with the neighboring schools. Well, we've discussed this at our management team this morning, and I've asked the chief to follow up. He's unable to be here this evening. That's why the deputy fire chief is here. We're very well aware that we need to look into why this was not followed, and we'll ask to follow this up with a planned memo. And we also discussed whether or not we need policy in place for our staff, all of our staff behind locked doors, except for our client center, was behind locked doors at the time of the drill. So we're looking to come up with a follow-up as to that. I think that we need to learn from this event, and it reflects the lack of communication that unfortunately we suffer through with our local police force. As Mrs. Collier states, we need to join all links involved, as she stated, and if such a similar event occurs again in the future, then children would be less impacted if a wholesale procedure was adopted to counter such a situation. We were lucky that nothing dire occurred, and if they're letting the fire station aware, if they're making them aware of what's going on, then the daycare centers should be aware also, because the parents are going to call the daycare center. Somebody needs to tell them that everybody should be made aware of such a drill being conducted. Makes no sense that we do so without being known. So, item 10.7. Just two questions concerning the door-to-door campaign to Mr. Villeneuve. If you could please relay the message to Mr. Sabourin with regards to bylaw enforcement. We still had door-to-door campaigns conducted with regards to hydro rates. People wanting to sell electricity door-to-door. And they didn't take no for an answer. These reps came in and said, show me your electrical bill, and I want to see it, and I need to see it. And it's hard to determine who's setting foot in our city. I don't know if they had a permit or not, but bring that to Mr. Sabourin's attention, because these salespersons are quite ruthless. They don't even take no for an answer. Mr. Grimard also stated that let's also perform a background check on Google with regards to these folks to determine whether or not they're eligible to sell electricity, because we've had problems with those. My second question is to Mrs. Collier. Now, we've been elected for more than 1 year now, and the Environment Committee has not yet held one meeting, and we haven't taken any steps to determine whether or not a committee will be created. I understand. So I'm just wondering if you could refresh that, and because we need to get this going, this environmental committee going. Any other questions to department heads? Anything else? Anything else? Well, that's fine then. So, adjournment, 10:33. Is everyone in agreement that we adjourn at 10:33? Thank you, one and all. Good evening, one and all. Thank you then.